Good morning, students. This is Miss Jackson. I just wanted to go ahead and create an instructional video for you today to give you some support on today's lesson. Um, I was going to do a Google Meet with you today, but I am having an appointment to be somewhere at 11 o'clock, and I'm just afraid that I won't make it back in time. So I'm doing something with STEM at 11. I have an appointment to make. So, um, pardon me for not being able to meet with you, um, for a Google Meet session. But today, what I am going to go over with you are, everything you need to be prepared for today's class. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Google Classroom. And I'm just going to open up academic one. Everybody's academic has the same work in it. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go over what's gonna be posted for you. Today you're gonna have an assignment that's posted. It's gonna be this handout right here. We're gonna go over some stuff in our notes so that you could be prepared for this particular assignment. So first, let's go ahead and open up our PowerPoint presentation. If you click on classwork and if you would go down to daily work, and if you would click on the genetics and heredity PowerPoint. Okay, so when we look at this picture right here, you notice this is a young lady. She's a female. She looks like she may be African American. She has curly hair. She also has brown eyes. These are traits. These are traits of this young lady. She has brown skin. She has big lips, and just different things about her. These are traits. These are characteristics of this young lady. That's what traits are. Also, you notice this is a picture of a baby. His eye traits are different from the lady in the previous picture. The lady in the previous picture had brown eyes, and this particular baby has blue eyes. So these are different eye traits. These two individuals, I'm not saying that they are related, but I'm just giving you an example of how traits can be different based on different people having different traits. Okay, here are some more traits. Some people have a regular thumb, and some people have hitchhiker's thumb. And I think I may have a little bit of hitchhiker's thumb. Okay. All right, this young lady has beautiful red hair. Some people may think that it's another color. I say it's red hair, but she has red hair. She has freckles. She also has like maybe red eyebrows. She's beautiful. Also, she has green eyes. This particular person is albino. That means that he is lacking pigmentation in certain places on his body, such as his hair, skin, and eyebrows, which is also hair on the body. This young lady, she has I think it's called widow's peak, where if you look at her hairline comes down and it curves and it goes back up again. Okay, this lady right here has green eyes, and these are different things that you can check for to see if you have these traits. Dimples, blue eyes, brown eyes, red hair, blonde hair, black hair, and so forth. All right, so You should already have reviewed these PowerPoint slides, but I'm just going to read over them briefly. Gregor Mendel is the father of genetics. He's the father of genetics. He came up with genetics using the pea plants. The principle of independent assortment, it is the inheritance of one, it is the inheritance that one trait has no effect on another trait. So basically your traits are determined based on your parents and what they pass down to you genetically, but green eyes have nothing to do with you having a brown skin, or height has nothing to do with your ears attached or unattached, and so forth. Genetics is the study of how traits are passed from parents to offspring. So genetics are the study of how traits are passed from parent to offspring. So when we talk about genetics, it's basically saying that a parent organism passes the traits to his offspring, to his or her offspring, or to his offspring. Keep in mind that when you're talking about plants also pass their traits on to their offspring when they're reproducing. When we're talking about bacteria produces asexually, but those traits are passed on to the offspring, which is the next generation through reproduction. That is tongue roll. You have a trait to roll your tongue. Some people can do it, some people cannot. Some people have dimples, some people does not, and those are specific traits that are passed down. And okay, I really can't see that because I have a box in the way, but I think that is dents in the chin, and then the other one is hair color. Okay, traits are determined by genes on the chromosomes. So you have chromosomes right here, okay? And then you have different genes on the chromosome. So if you were to see a chromosome, this would be, first we start with tissue, then inside the tissues we have cells. Inside the cells we have a nucleus, and inside of the nucleus you have DNA. So but that's for sexually reproduced organisms. Now asexual reproduction, what organisms that produce asexually may not have a nucleus. It may not be a nucleus bound organelle. But in this situation, since we're talking about humans, the chromosomes would be found inside of the nucleus of the cell. The cell is found in the tissue. The tissue is found on an organ or in an organ, and then the organ is found in an organ system, and the organ system is found inside of an organism. And in this case, the organism is the human body. So this is how we get a gene, and then this is how we get DNA. A gene is a segment of DNA. So all of this, so everything equals DNA. All of this, everything that's wrapped around the chromosome is the DNA. But a gene is a section, a segment, a part of DNA. Like right here, we got gene 1, gene 2, and we got a lot of genes. All right, so chromosomes come in homologous pairs. So that means 2 pairs. Thus, genes come in pairs. So if chromosomes come in pairs, meaning you got 2, then the genes come in pairs. So you might have gene for hair color, might have genes for hair color on one chromosome, and then the other one you might have another gene for hair color. One of them may be dominant, the other one may be recessive. The dominant gene will always cover the recessive gene. Homologous pairs, which are matching genes, one from the female parent and one from the male parent. So every time you have a trait, you have 2 genes for that trait. You have 2 genes from that trait, and one gene comes from mom and one gene comes from dad. Humans have a total of 46 chromosomes in each cell, and because they come in pairs, that's 23 pairs. One set comes from the daddy, which is 23 in the sperm cells, and one set comes from mom, which is 23 in the egg cells. remember in meiosis and mitosis, remember when we talked about that? I'm sorry, meiosis and mitosis. Meiosis is the sex cells and how they only have 23 because those cells will pair with the other cells of the opposite sex 23 more during sexual reproduction. If I lost you, no problem. This isn't anything that you have to be specific about, but I'm just trying to give you some clarity on some of the misconceptions of genetics and heredity. All right, so one pair of homologous chromosomes. You have your mom could have passed a gene for eye color, which would be the blue eyes, and then your dad passed a gene for eye color, which could have been brown eyes. One of these genes would be dominant, one would be recessive. The dominant one would show over the recessive one. Alleles, different genes for the same trait. So we're talking about the trait for eye color, then we're talking about alleles because you got one from your mama, one from your daddy, and one is dominant, one is recessive, and one will overpower the other, and then that's what you're gonna end up seeing in the person. Okay, so you got dominant and recessive traits. Genes that prevent the other one from showing is the dominant trait. Genes that prevent the other one from showing is the dominant trait. Genes that does not show, even though it is present, is the recessive trait. The symbol dominant gene will always be written as a capitalized letter. Recessive gene will always be written as a small letter. In this picture right here, you got babies because you got two dark babies out of one pinkish baby. So obviously, since you have more black, then the color for the coat of these animals would be grayish black, and that would be the dominant trait. The color of their coat of those animals, that would be considered the dominant traits, and then the pinkish color would be the recessive. Okay, you have straight thumb is dominant to hitchhiker's thumb. So if the straight thumb is dominant to hitchhiker's thumb, the capital you would write capital T. That will equal the straight thumb because it's dominant, and then the lower T, which is hitchhiker's thumb, because it's recessive. Because if one is dominant, then the other has to be recessive. If one is dominant, then the other has to be recessive. Always use the same letter for the same alleles. If you're going to talk about hitchhiker's thumb, don't use an S and an H. Just stick to using the same letter. Stick to using the same letter. So straight thumb, since it's dominant, it can be written big T. Since it's or it can be written big T, little t. So big T, we read that as dominant. Big T, little t, we read that as dominant because the big T always cover the little t, so we still read that as dominant. And then when it's little t, we read that as being recessive traits. So we have two in each one because for the trait for a thumb, a straight thumb or hitchhiker's thumb, we have two for each one. These are just the possibilities, okay? The reason why we have two is because one letter, like if we got big T written right here, one letter comes from the mother and one letter comes from the daddy, okay, of the human. So one comes from the mother of the human and one comes from the daddy of the human, okay? And both parents pass two dominant genes. So if they pass down two dominant genes, then the offspring has no choice but to have a straight thumb because dominant is going to give you dominant. Okay, moving to the next one, you have another straight thumb, but the mom passed down a dominant gene for a straight thumb, and the father passed down a recessive gene for a straight thumb. So when they pass down a dominant gene and a recessive gene, dominant gene right here, recessive gene right here, then when the dominant meets the recessive gene, we always read that as dominant again, because the dominant gene will overshadow the recessive gene every time. So the kid will have a straight thumb, even though in its DNA it has a recessive gene, but it meets a dominant gene. And then when the dominant gene meets a recessive gene, then that means that we read it as being dominant. So big T is dominant. Big T is always dominant. And then little t is recessive. So let's talk about the hitchhiker's thumb. How did the offspring get a hitchhiker's thumb? That's because mom passed a recessive gene, dad passed down a recessive gene, and two recessives will equal recessive. That's the only time you will ever read small letters as being recessive, when they're both together. So you got big T, which is going to be dominant, big T, which is going to be dominant, and then little t, that is going to be recessive. Okay, and down here it says must have two recessive alleles for a recessive trait to show. So if you want the recessive trait, if the recessive trait will show, that's because the mom and the dad passed down two recessive traits. All right, moving along. So both genes of a pair are the same. When they're the same, meaning big B or little b, we read that as homozygous or purebred. Okay? Big T, we call that homozygous dominant, because we're going to read this as dominant, and homozygous means the same. So we're going to read that homozygous dominant. Next, we got little t. We're going to read that homozygous recessive. Remember, when we have two small letters written together, we read that as being recessive. And since it's two of the same, we're going to call it homozygous recessive. Next, when one dominant trait and one dominant gene and one recessive gene is written together, we call that heterozygous or hybrid. Heterozygous or hybrid. It is written like this: big T. We call that heterozygous. Okay. Now let's talk about genotype and phenotype. A combination of genes an organism has its actual gene makeup is the genotype. So when we have big T, big T, little t, these are the genetic makeup. But the physical appearance is the phenotype. What do you see when you say big T? So it's resulting in the gene makeup is the phenotype, the physical appearance resulting in the gene makeup. So an example, you got big G. Okay, big G is going to be written as dominant, and in this case, dominant equals green. So we see big G, that's heterozygous dominant. So we're going to read that as green. So we have big G. We're going to read that as homozygous dominant, and that phenotype will be green because it's still dominant. When it's recessive, then it's gonna change the color. All right, so now let's talk about Punnett square and probability. Punnett square is used to predict the possible gene makeup of the offspring, and we're gonna get into this in a little bit. So, an example, we got a black fur is dominant to white fur, and the letters that we're using are big B and little b. So Now we got to cross a heterozygous male with a homozygous recessive female. Keep in mind that we are using the letters B. So let me log out of, let me exit out of this and go to my Jamboard. Okay, so going back over here, it says black fur is dominant to white fur. And we're going to do a cross of heterozygous male. So heterozygous male is going to be big B, little b. Heterozygous dominant. So I'm sorry, heterozygous male. And we know big B, little b is going to be dominant. Okay. We know big B, little b is going to be written as dominant because the big B will always cover the little b. So even though it got a little b in it, we always read it as dominant. And if it's dominant, we know that it's going to be, if it's dominant, we know that it is going to be black fur because it says right here, black fur is dominant to white fur in mice. So we know that this is going to be black fur. Excuse my handwriting. All right, so next, we're going to do a cross between heterozygous male and homozygous recessive female. So what does homozygous mean? Homozygous means same. Recessive means lowercase letters. So we're going to do little b, which equals recessive. Check my spelling. May have misspelled something, but little b is going to be recessive, and that's going to equal white fur. Okay? So we have two parent mice, and we're trying to see the probability of how many offspring will have either black fur or white fur. We're trying to see that possibility. Okay? So we got a male right here, and we have a female. We're trying to see if they were to reproduce sexually, how many of their offspring, what's the probability of their offspring having either black fur or white fur. Okay, now we're going to go to another board. And we're going to change the color to white. All right, so now let's cross it. We're going to cross big B, little b with little b, okay? I'm sorry, hold on 1 second, guys. Let me undo that. Okay, so what you do is you draw a box. I want to come down just a little bit. So we're going to draw a box right here, okay? And in your box, you're going to have 4 boxes in the box, inside of the box. You always put one parent's genes at the top. So I just start with the first one, big B, little b, right here. And then I do little b down here. So I put one parent right here, and then I put a second parent right here, okay? And we're looking for fur color. We're trying to figure out how many of the offspring will have a white or black fur color, okay? Now we know big B, little b is dominant, so that's going to read black fur. Little b is going to read recessive, so that's going to be white fur. So now what we're going to do is we drop from the top, slide from the side every time. So we're going to drop from the top. So big B, slide from the side, little b. Okay? In this square, we're going to drop from the top, and then we're going to slide from the side. Okay? So we're going to drop from the top, so that's going to be little b, slide from the side, little b. Right here, we're going to drop from the top, big B, and we're going to slide from the side, little b. And then we're going to drop from the top, put it right there, little b, and we're going to slide from the side, little b. Okay? Now, let's look at it. These are a possibility of 4 offspring. So these are 2 parents that hypothetically had 4 offspring. Okay? So big B, little b. Now we're looking at the offspring. Now we got to read this. Big B, little b is going to be dominant or recessive. If you said dominant, you are correct. So this genotype is big B, little b. The genotype is big B, little b, but the phenotype, since it reads dominant, the phenotype is going to be black. So it's going to be black fur. So this particular offspring is going to have black fur. Little b is dominant or recessive. If you said recessive, you are correct. So this offspring will have white fur. This offspring will have white fur. And this offspring will have black fur. So we got 50% of the offspring. This right here, 50%, 2 out of 4. So we got 1, 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 out of 4 is going to have white fur. Excuse my handwriting. And then we got another 50%, which is 2 out of 4, will have what? Will have black fur. Okay? All right. So we should be all good. Okay, so now for your assignment today, we're going to stop right there with our notes. We're not going to go any further. If you want to continue to read it, give you more information on it. But what we're going to do, we're going to look at our assignment for today. So, looking at this assignment, I'm going to try to zoom in just a little bit. Okay. So, looking at our assignment today, what you're going to do, it says, you're going to read the instructions. It says, scientists at Bikini Bottom have been investigating the genetic makeup of the organisms in the community. Use the information provided and your knowledge of genetics to answer each question. Number 1, it says, for each genotype below, indicate whether it is heterozygous or homozygous. So let's look at big T, big T. 2 capital letters together are going to give us homozygous or heterozygous. So go back to your notes if you're unsure to read the definition of homozygous. But big T is going to be homozygous. So you're going to write HO right here. HO. Big D, little d, which is a capital letter and a small letter, that is heterozygous. That's a combination of 2 of different traits. You got a big letter and a small letter. So that's going to be HE. HE. Remember, another name for purebred is going to be homozygous. Another name for hybrid is going to be heterozygous. Homozygous, heterozygous. Okay, so down here it says determine the phenotype for each genotype using the information provided about SpongeBob. So determine the phenotype for each genotype using the information provided about SpongeBob. So we have a yellow body color is dominant to a blue body color. So we know the yellow is dominant and the blue is recessive because it says dominant 2. So if it's dominant 2, that means blue is the recessive one, yellow is the dominant one. So when we go down here, we're trying to decide the phenotype for these genotypes. The genetic code is bit y, little y, little y, little y. And we're trying to determine the phenotype, the physical appearance of big Y, the physical appearance of big Y, little y, and the physical appearance of little y, little y. So let me ask you a question. Big Y, do we read that as dominant or recessive? If you said dominant, you are correct. So the dominant color is yellow. So you will write yellow right here. Big Y, little y. How do you read that? Dominant or recessive? If you said dominant, you are correct. Because the big Y always covers the little y. The big letter always covers the little letter. So you're going to write yellow as the color. You're going to write yellow as SpongeBob's color. Now, little y is going to be recessive because you got 2 small letters. So you're going to read this as blue because remember, blue is the recessive color. So this color is going to be blue. Now it says for each phenotype, give the genotypes that are possible for Patrick. So a tall head, big T, is dominant to a short head. So you got a tall head, which is, you can write that as big T, comma, big T, little t, and that's it. Because those are the only 2 things that give you dominant combinations. Big T, comma, big T, little t. And then short is going to be recessive, so you're going to write what over here? Little t. Remember, you're going to always write them in pairs because you're getting one from your mom and one from the dad. I'm going to let you do the square shape to round shape by yourself, and I'm going to let you do the pink body color and yellow body color by yourself. All right, now we're going to move down to the Punnett squares. I'm just going to do one example for you. All right. I'm going to go back to my jam board. All right. So we're going to read the question. The question says, number 4, SpongeBob SquarePants recently met Sponge Susie Roundpants at a dance. SpongeBob is heterozygous for his square shape, but Sponge Susie is round. Create a Punnett square to show the possibilities that would result if SpongeBob and Sponge Susie had children. Hint, read question 2. All right, so we got 2 parents, SpongeBob SquarePants and Sponge Susie Roundpants. So we got SpongeBob SquarePants. And then we got Sponge Susie Roundpants, okay? All right, so we're trying to figure out the genotype for each one of these individuals. And it says, read question 2. So the yellow, square shape is dominant to round. So the square shape is going to be dominant, and the round shape is going to be recessive. And we're using the letter S's, because it says number 2. So we're talking about a square shape and a round shape. So it says that SpongeBob is heterozygous for his square shape. So he's heterozygous. If he's heterozygous, he's going to be big S, little s. And make sure you emphasize a big S and a little s. All right. Sponge Susie, she's gonna be round pants, so that's recessive. So we know she's gonna be little s, little s. All right. Now we're gonna do the Punnett square. Go ahead and I'm gonna draw my square, but you should be writing in this square right here, typing in this square using Cami. All right, so we're gonna put one parent at the top and one parent on the side. So we're gonna put big S, little s right here, and then we're gonna put little s right here. So remember what we do. We drop from the top, slide from the side. Drop from the top. So that's gonna be a big S, slide from the side, little s. Drop from the top, little s, slide from the side, little s. Drop from the top, big S, slide from the side, little s. Drop from the top, little s, slide from the side, little s. Okay? Now, let's go back to the worksheet. So we filled in the Punnett square. It says list the possible genotypes and phenotypes for the children. All right? So the genotype, let's start with the first kid. So we got big S, little s. We read this as dominant. So this is going to be a square body. We're gonna read this as dominant, so that's gonna be a square body. Read this as recessive, so that's gonna be a round body. Read this as recessive, it's gonna be a round body. So the possible genotypes are going to be big S, little s, comma, little s, and then the possible phenotypes, which big S, little s means square shape, and then little s means round shape. Okay. So we did part A. Now we're going to go to part B. What are the chances of a child with a square shape? Okay, let's go back to it. The chances of a child with a square shape, I only see 2 of them. So that's going to be 2 out of 4. That's going to be 2 out of 4. And then it says, what are the chances of a child with a round shape? That's going to be 2 out of 4. Okay. And then it says a percentage. So both of them are going to be 50%. Both of them will be 50%. And that's pretty much how we're going to do this handout. And you're going to continue to read these situations. This is a 30% grade. If you need help, please let me know. I'm sorry. I said this totally wrong. I don't want to scare you. This is a 10% grade. The next one that we do is going to be a 30% grade tomorrow. So go ahead and finish this today so that you can be able to make a good grade on your work tomorrow. If you got specific questions, please reach out to me. This unit is not a easy unit, but you can do this. I got faith in you. You actually can do this. You guys can do this. All right, so this is gonna be posted in your Google Classroom. This is gonna be posted in your Google Classroom, so you need to make sure that you rewatch this video as many times as you can to understand everything. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.